Hello again, everyone. It's Pastor Wagner. Welcome to my video blog. This morning I want to talk about whether or not Jesus Christ is the eternally begotten Son of God, whether he was begotten in eternity or not, or when in fact he was begotten is the real question. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of denominations, a lot of creeds and statements of faith over the years for a long time now that have maintained that Jesus is the eternally begotten Son of God, as they say, or he is eternally generated, that he became the Son of God in eternity past, and he's always existed as the Son of God. And I'll just give you a couple of quotes here, just so you know that the scope of this, and that I'm not making it up, both. We see here from the Westminster Confession of Faith, which is a very popular confession of faith. I'm sure many of you have heard of that before, and I just have a little excerpt out of it here. It says, "The Son is eternally begotten of the Father." That was from Chapter 2, Section 3 of the Westminster Confession. We see here in the London Baptist Confession, so the Westminster Confession is a Protestant confession, Presbyterian confession. Here's from the London Baptist Confession of 1689, which is a confession that a lot of Baptist churches use, to this day even. It says, "The Son is eternally begotten of the Father." That was from Chapter 2, Section 3, also from the London Baptist Confession. Here's from Dr. Henry Morris. He's deceased now, but he was from the Institute of Creation Research, I do believe, and this is from his article on God's only begotten Son. He says, "He is not just the only begotten Son of the Father, for he is also the eternally begotten Son." He is not just the only begotten Son of the Father, for he is also the eternally begotten Son of the Father. There we go. He's not just the only begotten, he's also the eternally begotten Son of the Father, Henry says. And in that same article, he says, "The doctrine of, quote, eternal generation, unquote, was what the older theologians called this great truth. He did not become the only Son by his virgin birth." That's very important. See what Dr. Morris says? He did not become the only Son by his virgin birth. He was the only begotten Son from eternity, quote, "set up from everlasting," unquote, Proverbs 8:23. So Dr. Morris is very clear that Jesus did not become the Son of God by the virgin birth. Jesus became the Son, or Jesus was the only begotten Son from eternity. So he's very clear on that. And that is just a sampling of what the majority of Christianity believes, if they've even given any thought to this question at all. Well, there's a problem with this. Just the very definitions of the words make a very difficult problem for this doctrine, and just show the contradiction of it if you just define the words. That's all I won't even have to go to the Bible to show that this doctrine is a heresy just by defining the words. Eternally, because they say he's the eternally begotten Son of God. Eternally is in an eternal manner, chiefly with reference to God from everlasting to everlasting. That's right from the Oxford English Dictionary. And since eternally is in an eternal manner, let's define eternal. Eternal is infinite in past and future duration, without beginning or end. That always has existed and always will exist, especially of the divine being. You see that? Eternal is without beginning. We all know that. We know that God has no beginning, right? This isn't rocket science. Eternal is without beginning. Now, begotten means procreated, and to procreate is to beget, engender, generate offspring. It's to produce offspring. It's to bring into existence, produce, to give rise to, occasion. To procreate is to beget, and to beget is to procreate, and to procreate is to bring into existence. So what they're saying when they say that Jesus is the eternally begotten Son of God, they're saying that he eternally came in or was brought into existence. How can you eternally bring something into existence? If you are eternally brought into existence, you haven't been brought into existence yet. And furthermore, eternally is eternal, which means without beginning. How can Jesus be brought into existence, which would say that he has a beginning? How can he be eternally brought into existence when eternal is without beginning? You see that? See, because the thing that we need to understand here, and this is what I'm going to get into presently, is Jesus has two natures. He's both fully God and fully man. In his divine nature, in his godly nature, he was never begotten. He has no beginning. Okay? Let me show you some verses. I'll show you some verses. We'll go to the scripture. I'm going to give you 3 verses, and that's all we're going to need to refute this heresy of this eternally begotten God, which is a Catholic doctrine, which got passed down into Protestantism, and as we see, even into Baptist churches have adopted this for many, many years. But here, 3 verses. This is all we need. 1 John 1 and verse 1. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So here's this Word. We know who the Word was from other scriptures. There are 3 that bear record in heaven: the Father, the Word, and the Holy Ghost, and these 3 are one. 1 John 5:7. This Word is the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ. This Word is the second person of the Trinity. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word, the second person of the Trinity, was God, is God, and furthermore, he created all things, as we see in the next 2 verses. So I lied. I'm going to give you a couple more verses besides 3. The same was in the beginning with God, verse 2. Verse 3, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So here's the Word, the second person of the Trinity, which was with God in the beginning, was God in the beginning, and he created all things. Now, it was this Word, this second person of the Trinity, which was made flesh, okay, and dwelt among us. Verse 14 of John 1, same chapter. "And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." So here's this Word, the second person of the Trinity that was God from all eternity. He was made flesh. When was he made flesh? When he was born of the Virgin Mary. That's when he was made flesh. And that is when he became the Son of God. Let me show you. Turn over to Luke. Luke chapter 1 and verse 35. Luke 1:35. And this will cinch it up. This is when the angel came to Mary to tell her that she was going to give birth to the Messiah. And it says there in Luke 1:35, "And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God." You see it? The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Okay? Therefore, because of that, because the Holy Ghost and the power of the highest are going to come upon you and overshadow thee, because of that, therefore also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God. That holy thing, that little baby, the Lord Jesus Christ, that would be born of her would be called the Son of God, because the power of the highest overshadowed her and the Holy Ghost came upon her. Because of that, because God himself made the Virgin Mary pregnant and made her bring forth this child being a virgin, because of that, that thing that would be born of her, the Son of God himself, the Jesus Christ himself, would be called the Son of God. He was not the Son of God prior to being born of the Virgin Mary. He was not the Son of God in all eternity, which is a contradiction of terms which makes no sense, which means ultimately, if he was the Son of God from all eternity, it means that he was created at some point in eternity past as God, that his divine nature was created and begotten, and that is a rank heresy. Jesus Christ has no beginning in his divine nature. In his human nature, he had a beginning. It was right there in Luke 1:35. Whenever he was born of the Virgin Mary, and that is when he became the Son of God, because God was his Father. God was the one that caused the conception. God, therefore, was his Father. That's when he became the Son of God. He was not the Son of God prior to that. And this is a rank heresy, and I hope that I've done a sufficient job of refuting it. There's a much more that could be said, but I like to keep these video blogs short. If you got any issues, you can post your comments, and I can reply to them with another video refuting any objections that you may have to this. Thank you for your time. I hope this was beneficial to you, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.